So obviously this is 1.1 lines. It is as basic as it sounds like it's going to be. This is not really any actual calculus yet. This is mostly a review section. So the first one's find the coordinate increments from A to B. So basically just like what's the change in Y and what's the change in X. So number 2, A is -3, 2, and then B is -1, -2. So essentially all I'm looking for is delta Y, and so it doesn't matter which one obviously you choose to be the first one, but -2 minus 2 is just -4, and then same thing for X. Delta X is -1 minus a -3, which is just 2. So that's all you have to do for those ones. Kind of boring. The next section says, well, it has a few different things you're supposed to do. It says to plot the 2 points, find the slope, and then to draw the actual line between the 2 points. I trust by this point that you can do that, so all we're going to do is find the slope.
Okay.
So if you want to do the other stuff, you can, but all I'm going to do is slope. So A is 1, 2, and B is 1, -3. Do you remember the slope formula?
It's like y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1.
Yep. So -3 minus 2 over 1 minus 1. So that's -5 over 0. What happens when we divide by 0?
It's 0.
No.
It's undefined.
Yep. So if it's 0 on top, it's 0. If it's 0 on the bottom, it's undefined. The next one's write an equation for the vertical line and the horizontal line. So the point that they give us is P is -1 and then 4/3. So they want the vertical line equation and the horizontal line equation. Do you remember which one's which?
To be honest, no.
Okay, so vertical is going to be your x equation, which is the one that goes, basically if you were to graph it, it goes straight up and down, and then horizontal is your y that goes left to right. And so the vertical one, to write an equation of one of these lines, it's just x equals and y equals for horizontal. And then when they give us a point like that, essentially we just have to make sure the line goes through that point. And so in this case, x is -1 and y is 4/3. So they're pretty chill. Just remembering which one's which. I always have to think about them at first because I haven't done them in a while, and but essentially they give you the equations like you would have had a horizontal or vertical asymptote line. That's kind of what I try to remember with those. Write the point slope equation for the line through point P with slope M. Do you remember the formula for point slope?
Y equals m x minus x1 and plus y.
Yeah. So you can do it that way. The way that we would have done it would have been y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1, but this is the way that this book ends up writing it a lot, which is fine. Obviously, it's the same thing, so it really doesn't matter which way you end up doing it because it's going to give you the same final answer either way. But basically, then for number 14, they're giving us a point of -1, 1 and a slope of -1. I feel like they at least could have chosen some like harder numbers. But literally, like, the next problem is -4, 0. Like, what?
I don't know.
So I choose this one because at least you have 3 different numbers to work with. So, the first y and the first x are just stay as y and x, and then the stuff with the ones are obviously what gets swapped out. So this is y equals -1 for my slope times x. Now it's minus a negative, so that's going to end up being +1, and then +1 for y1. And technically speaking, we could leave it this way because all it asks for is point slope form, or with even that +1 on the left with the y if you had written it the other way. But if you want to take it all the way down, then obviously we could do y equals -x minus 1 plus 1. And so then y equals -x because all that stuff cancels. So this is the other way you could write it. I don't really care in the end. There are some things where it's better to have it in point slope and then some where it's better to have it in slope intercept. So, but either way is fine. I don't really care. 20. This one wants it in slope intercept, and they literally give you the slope and the intercept, so you don't have to like do anything. I always feel like this section is like not like boring, but like I feel like if you're in calculus and like you're doing this, like it's, I don't know, it's like algebra 1 stuff and you're like redoing it all. I don't know. These first couple sections I tend to fly through because it's all review. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So the slope is 1/3 and the intercept is -1. So obviously slope intercept is y equals mx plus b, so we can literally just plug this in. So y equals 1/3 x minus 1. Sometimes I question if I should even like teach this stuff, but I'm usually like, review's not a bad thing. Write a general form linear equation, or we would have called it standard form, for the line through the 2 points. Do you remember what standard form is?
It's like sort of in my brain. Like if I saw it.
Yeah, standard is honestly, like, now that I've taught it for so long, like, I've got it, but I would 100% say up until I started teaching it, I really had to think about what standard form was, like, it just, but it's ax plus by equals c, so it's just basically you put all the variables on one side and the numbers on the other. And we, aside from if you're finding intercepts, we really don't use this formula for anything. Like, typically in this class we use point slope, maybe going into slope intercept, just depending on how things go with like what they're asking us for. But we really don't use general, but I'll do one just as a refresher. So they give us our 2 points. They're -2, 1 and 2, -2. So we still need to find our slope first. So we've got, let's see, -2 minus 1 over 2 minus negative, so +2. So I've got -3 over 4. Now, ultimately, I still need to use point slope to start because of the information that I'm given. Do you want to use the first point or the second point?
The second.
Okay. So we've got y +2, if you want to do it the other way you can, but equals -3/4 times x minus 2. So then I'm going to distribute and then basically start moving things around. So y equals -3/4 x plus 3, whoops, that's not a 3, 3/2 minus 2. Basically, I usually wait and move the piece over, but like I said, you can do it the other way. So then I'll go ahead and move the x term over, and then I'll just combine the 3/2 and the -2. So I've got 3/4 x plus y equals, what was that, -1/2? Wait. Oh. So you can leave it this way. Honestly, most of the time this is what I would do. I was trying to figure out why the answer didn't look like this in the book. The other thing you can do, if you remember, I showed you this trick maybe last year, it might have been the year before, but how we can get rid of fractions like across by multiplying the entire thing by something. So I'm just going to like show you this, because that way if you're like checking your answers in the back and you're like, my answer doesn't look like that. Basically, they took and they multiplied everything by 4, so that they ended up with 3x plus 4y equals -2, so that it just looks nicer. I would take either if this was like a quiz or test question. But like I said, more so showing you because this is not the answer that they give you in the book. They give you this one. So I don't know why in some respects, I'm like, that makes it more complicated, but obviously it would make it easier if you were actually using it for something, potentially, but either way, it'll be fine. What's next? It says find the slope and the y-intercept, and then it says to graph the line. I'm not worried about graphing a line, but 28, they give it to you in standard form, so x plus y equals 2. So obviously to find your slope, you need to move or get it in slope-intercept form to do that. So y equals -x plus 2. So then slope is -1, y-intercept is 2, and that's all you would need to do there. Parallel and perpendicular lines. Do you remember how to find those? To write the equation? Okay. So perpendicular is going to be really critical that you basically know how to do those. We don't use parallel as much in terms of like finding one, but perpendicular is going to be how we're finding our tangent and normal lines eventually when we get into the more calculus-y stuff. So 32, they're going to give you a point, so -2, 2. And then the line that they're giving us is 2x plus y equals 4. So parallel lines have the same slope, and then perpendicular is the opposite inverse. So if it's like 2, it would be -1/2 would be the other slope. So essentially I need to find the slope of this first. So y equals -2x plus 4. So this slope is -2. So then when I'm doing the, like going through and writing my equations of the lines, like I'll be like, okay, the parallel slope would be the same thing, so that would be -2, and then I basically just go through and I write it in point slope form. If you want to convert it all the way to slope intercept, obviously you can, to make sure that you've got it, but this would be then y, try to do it the other way, equals -2 times x minus negative, so plus 2, and then plus the 2 for y1 there. Which again, you can leave it here if you want to take it all the way. This would be -2x minus 4 plus 2 So y equals negative 2x minus 2. So this is your parallel line. So a lot of times, just to note what I'm dealing with, I'll put the little parallel symbol or the perpendicular symbol down there. But as long as some way you've noted which one's which, it doesn't matter. And then perpendicular. So the perpendicular slope would be what? Yep, positive 1/2. So then y equals 1/2 times x, and the same thing, plus 2, and then outside is plus 2 for the y. So then I've got y equals 1/2 x plus 1 plus 2, or y equals 1/2 x plus 3. And obviously you don't necessarily have to write. You could go straight to the plus 3. Obviously, still showing work is good, but there's certain work that in calculus you just don't need to show some of the basic algebra steps when you can just do them in your head. No, the calculus work, you can't really skip that because you kind of need it usually, but anyways. What is this last question here? So these ones are kind of like a work in reverse. So they give you basically 2 points, and then essentially you're either solving for x or y with a given slope to figure out what the other coordinate is. So they've given us in 38, point A is -8, -2, and then B is x2. And the slope is 2. So essentially we're taking the slope formula and we're plugging everything in that we're given here. Obviously x is getting plugged in for one of the 2 points there, and we're just solving for that. So we've got 2 is equal to 2 minus a negative, so plus 2 over x minus 8, nope, minus a negative, plus 8. So I would just go ahead and multiply here, and instead of having to write out the whole thing twice, I'm just going to go ahead and go to 2x plus 16 equals 4. Subtract 16, so 2x equals -12, and so x equals -6. And so then that would be your x value. That would basically give you a slope of 2. Any questions about any of this stuff? All right, so problems. And especially with these earlier sections, I'm not as worried that you necessarily do every single problem that I give you. Because I know a lot of this is a refresher, so if you're like, I already know how to do this, like, I'm not trying to have you waste your time on this stuff. Obviously, as we get into the calculus, you're going to need to do more to make sure that you understand, because I'm not going to say every problem's different, but they're not all exactly the same either. So the problems I would say are 1 through 21, every other odd, because essentially it would be doing like what I just did, where there's like one of each type, and then 27, 31, and 37, because there's a few in the middle that you don't need to worry about. And like I said, you don't need to graph anything that we didn't graph. Just whatever we did is all you would need to do from those. So, and I think I told you, but like